877-824-BEN.
Pay for your free guide.
And in the personal story segment tonight, 2 American teen boys came home last night after reportedly being held against their will at a madrassa in Pakistan. The Khan brothers were sent there by their father, who's a Pakistan native, and in 2004 he sent them there to learn the Quran. But they wanted to leave after being beaten repeatedly there. Finally, Congressman Michael McCaul, a Republican from Texas, was able to convince the president of Pakistan to have the boys released. Apparently, there may be many more American kids in similar situations at the madrassa. And joining us now from Austin is Congressman Michael McCaul, and from Atlanta, Pakistani-American filmmaker Imran Raza, who uncovered the story and directed and produced the documentary called Karachi Kids. Gentlemen, good to have you here.
Hey, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
I want to start with you, Imran, because when I first learned about this story, I've got to tell you, I'm pretty cynical about some things, but I couldn't believe that this had happened, that 2 boys had been sent over to Pakistan to live in a madrassa, apparently against their will, and were there for quite some time. How did you get wind of this story, and how did you get those boys on tape from the madrassa?
Well, what happened was after I saw July 7th, I was, my curiosity was piqued about what a madrassa was. So I got the opportunity in September of 2005 to go into the Binaria madrassa, which is, a madrassa that's a Deobandi madrassa, and the Deobandis are the ones who have created the Taliban, and that whole ideology and that way of life is something that the Deobandis, hold to be the correct way of life. So essentially, as I was walking through there, I heard these voices that were, in perfect American English, and it's this, 13 and 14-year-old boys, and it was absolutely a surreal moment. It was surreal enough walking through the madrassa, because I'd never been in an environment like that. My trips to Pakistan had been more into the colonial British sort of built segments, and I'm sure Congressman McCaul saw some of those on his trip. But there's 2 different, very, very different worlds. But this kind of goes off to the other end. You're going through this environment that's very stark, very there's no color, there's no light, and then suddenly you hear an American, these American kids sort of reaching out and saying, "You're an American," and then sort of like, "Yes, but what are you doing here?" And that was, I think, it was a stunning moment, really. And
Congressman, how did you then get involved? I know you traveled to Pakistan, you talked to President Musharraf there. What happened?
Well, President Musharraf in Pakistan has a policy that they do not allow Americans in the madrassas, and that's a good policy to have in my view. I called his attention these 2 American boys who were in this madrassa. It's one of the most radical ones in Pakistan, by the way, as an example of the bigger picture that there are Americans over there in these madrassas, and I asked for his assistance in getting them out. Happy to say that within less than a week, these boys returned home and came home to Atlanta last night.
Well, we should remind everybody that the London underground bombings that took place on July 7th in 2005, remember that a few of the terrorists who carried out those bombings studied in the madrassas in Pakistan, and so that was the impetus for this whole film. Now, Imran, I want to go back to you, because I'm thinking if these 2 boys were at this madrassa, you were able to find them basically when you were there, how many other young Americans are at these madrassas? And then what happens when they come back to this country? Because those boys started off as wanting to come home. And then when we watch the Karachi Kids film, you see them actually getting increasingly radicalized in their views. And it was terrifying.
Right. I mean, essentially, like when you talk about the whole process that takes place in the film, and you're seeing this, the Mufti he's the head of the Binaria Madrasa. He claims that there's about 70 to 80 American students in that particular institution. There's an estimated, there are more, but that is his own sort of claim. But what's more important is the fact that this phenomenon exists. And to me, as a musician, as someone who, as an artist, this is a direction that is a problem for Pakistan, but and Pakistan is at a crossroads where Pakistan needs to make is going to go in one direction or the other.
Well, Imran, this is a problem for Pakistan, we know, but this is a problem
this is what I wanted
for the
to say,
United
that
States.
This is the problem. No, what I wanted to say was that it's the problem for Pakistan is a problem for the world.
Yeah, well,
and
sure
we're
is.
seeing what's happening over there, and Congressman McCaul saw that out there. See, when he visited, but essentially, like what's happening out there is being sort of exported throughout the world.
Well,
so
it's,
what happens there, affects the rest of the world.
Congressman, we have about 20 seconds, but have you contacted the U.S. State Department about this, and can we do a follow-up on whether there's other young Americans there being held essentially against their will?
Yeah, we in the Congress are going to be looking at the broader picture here in terms of how many more Americans are stuck in these madrassas. As you point out, the subway bombings in London, they're trained in these madrassas, the London arrests, getting on the airplanes. There's a bigger picture that's a threat not only to our soldiers in Afghanistan, but to the United States and the security of the United States.
Well, we appreciate it, Congressman. We're out of time, but we want you to stay on this issue. Right. Gentlemen, thank you for what you're doing on this. We really appreciate it. And plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening. A former